Backs upright, our shoulders relaxed. And feel the solidity of our body on our cushion and on our chair while we listen to 3 sounds of the bell. Dear respected Thai, dear spiritual family, today is December 31st in the year 2023, and we are at Deer Park Monastery during our holiday retreat. I would like to ask the children, how many pairs of clothes do you have? You have a lot? I won't ask the adult this, just the children. Or how many did you bring to the retreat? Do you know? Or your parents know? No? 3? Wonderful. Well, all of us monastics were supposed to have 3 robes and a bowl. Just 3 robes and a bowl. But we follow in modern day society, so we all have a check-in and a carry-on. Luckily, we don't have 3 check-ins and a carry-on. But one of the things that I always carry with me, it's always carry with me, other than my clothes, other than my yellow robes, is this bell. I have a very special bell here. It was a gift from a friend in Japan. And this bell, our teacher has taught us, is the voice of the Buddha. You've heard him before, right? Have you heard the voice of the Buddha? Yeah? So today I would like to invite you to learn how to listen to the bell. We don't say hit the bell, because if it's the voice of the Buddha, then why would we hit the Buddha? Right? We would say invite the Buddha. We invite the Buddha to sound. And we have lots of bells in the monastery, but this one can fit in my pocket. This is the pocket Buddha, just in my pocket everywhere I go. And the most wonderful thing is that I love listening to the voice of the Buddha. He's my best friend. But other than that, to keep the Buddha company, I have a lot of other friends in my bell bag. It looks like a little fish. But right now my hands are a little bit tied, so I'm going to have to invite the brother to help me with the bell. Usually, when we invite someone over, we send an invitation, right? When we send, have you had birthday parties and you invited your friends over? Yeah, and we had sent an invitation. We also have to send an invite to the Buddha. And the first part of that is that only when we are calm enough and still enough, should we invite him? So as a practice, all of the monks and nuns breathe deeply before we invite the Buddha. And we read a little poem. You don't have to remember this poem, but the poem goes as, I bring all of my body, my speech, my mind right here. I'm really present. I'm really present right here. And I send my heart with the sound of the bell. Earlier, we heard the sound of the big bell. And the big bell is just right outside of this meditation hall. But you heard it all the way up in Solidity Hamlet, right? So just imagine if your heart is full of love and you send your heart, you can be standing here and everybody in Solidity Hamlet will feel all of the love that you have. So when you say, I send my heart along with the sound of the bell, you're sending your compassion, your understanding, your joy, just by breathing in one place and being truly present. You send your heart all the way over there. And maybe even the neighbors down on the mountain can hear it too. So they receive your love. I send my heart along with the sound of the bell. May the hearers, with those who hear this sound, wake up and transcend the path of sorrow. But you can say, may they wake up and be happy. And that is because of your love. So every time you see a brother or a sister, or if your mother and father has a bell at home, you can join your palm. That's what they are doing. They're sending their love with the sound of the bell. So it can reach far, 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 far away. But in order to do that, we have to invite the Buddha to come. So maybe my younger brother can practice this for all of us. And I have a secret to tell you before we invite the Buddha, is that we all have the Buddha within us. So in order to wake up the Buddha, we have a half sound of the bell. We sort of wake up and like, hello Buddha, are you at home? With the wake up sound of the bell. We call this the half sound. It's a simple tap, just a simple tap. And usually we take in one breath just to wait and to hear the Buddha say, yes, I am home. But for us as the listeners, what do? When we hear the sound of the wake-up sound, we prepare ourselves. Like when you receive a guest into your home, you always clean up your room. And did you clean up your room for the holidays? No? Oh dear. So we just closed the door so no one came into the room, right? Me too. But usually, we clean up the room or we clean up our house. If you didn't clean up, maybe your parents did. When they received all of their friends and family, they clean up the house and they prepare to welcome all the guests. And so when we hear the wake-up sound, we also say, hello, Buddha, are you there? And when you take a breath, and the Buddha says, yes, I am here. And that's what we do is when we prepare ourselves. So the wake-up sound is also for us to prepare to welcome the Buddha. Because we had invited him by inviting him with the sound of the bell. So every single time when you hear the wake-up sound of the bell, wake up. We start to adjust our posture and prepare ourselves to receive the voice of the Buddha. Okay? And then we hear the full sound. You're breathing in and out. The Buddha said, I am here for you. I am here for you. And when the Buddha is present, everything is okay. Yeah? You think so? Do you think when the Buddha is present, everything is okay? So this is the same thing. It's the same thing. Every single time you feel that you are a little bit excited, when you have a strong emotion, you can always invite the Buddha. And sometimes you have to take refuge. You have to call on him. And he will always be there. The Buddha will always be there. Always be there for you. Because once he is there, everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. You know, the Buddha is also known as another name. I've learned his secret name. And his secret name is Mr. Love. The Buddha's name is Mr. Love. You believe that? Because he has so much love. But it's just the safe kind of love. And his name is Mr. Love. So we can say, instead of writing the Buddha, that I would like to invite Mr. Love to breathe with me. And he said, I am here for you, breathing together with you. And because that he will help us learn how to love ourselves, learn how to understand ourselves, and invite us to learn how to understand and love others. And I know that he has given us 2 practices. And I think the children will have a chance to learn that sometime this week. It's called the 2 promises of understanding and love. But I'm sure all of you already know that. Do you know about the 2 promises yet? Yeah? No? Yeah? Okay, maybe we can sing that song once now together and the adults can help out. And then the children can go out and continue to learn about Mr. Love. Okay? I vow to develop understanding in order to live peacefully with people, animals, plants, and minerals. Animals, plants, and minerals. Let's breathe. I vow to develop my compassion in order to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. Animals, plants, and minerals. Thank you, everyone. When we hear the sound of the small bell, if there is a small bell, or maybe there you can borrow, I'll invite the small bell for you. Oh, it's in the big bell. And the small bell, and you can stand up. All the children can stand up, just the children. And you can turn around to all your mom, dad, and uncles and aunties and brothers and sisters, and you can bow to them and say, thank you for supporting your practice. And you can follow Sister Grasshopper. I think that's her name, Sister Grasshopper. And if you don't know me, I'm Sister Chicken. And you can join your program. Let us listen to a sound of the bell to invite the Buddha to be present with us. This morning we had an opportunity to hike up the mountains. And while going up the mountains, it's not a smooth path. It's a little bit rugged. And there's a lot of twists and turns and bends, and you don't really see your destination, right? But occasionally, along that hike, the brothers and sisters would stop, and the whole Sangha would stop, and we would just take a moment to look around us, to enjoy the scenery, to enjoy the fresh air, to take a breath, and maybe tie your shoe or take a sip of water, and then we would continue on. I've always loved that image of just walking and stopping and looking back. In the year 1999, right on the New Year's Eve in Plum Village, I think it was when I was 17 years old, I heard a term that Thai had said, we're climbing the hill of the century. That's big. Climbing the hill of a century. We're turning over to a new century, and we're going to start climbing that hill. And how many times or how many of us have taken the time to look back on how far we have gotten? According to the calendar, it's been 24 years we've been climbing. 24 years, where every year is another step. Every year is another step on this hill of the century. And looking back now, in 24 years, 24 steps, halfway there, halfway up the hill. What have we done? Did we have the chance to take a stop, turn around and look back and just enjoy the view? Or were we too busy just running and running after our projects, our pain, and our despair that we completely forgot we're climbing the hill of the century? It's a marvelous thing to be able to start a new era, start a new century. And how have we started that? I remember in that Dharma talk, Thai said, this is a legendary moment to being present in this new change, in this new century. And the walking meditation that we had was completely still, fully invested each of our attention in every single step that we took in the new year, because it's very important. It's not about New Year's resolutions. New year, new me, that's so cliche. Almost, right? Almost. But what is it really about? I had a couple of chances to look back and look deeply into this new year and new me. And I remember Tai said, you cannot have a new year if you are the same you. If you are the old you. And that took me like, oh. So what do I do that should make me new? You know, I find a lot, oftentimes right around this time on social media, everybody's doing their cap of the year of all the highlights, and getting ready to promise to do something even better, even bigger, even more. But yet still there are some things that we don't change. Our habits, our habits of running, our habit of chasing ideas of happiness, and sometimes unintentionally creating suffering for ourselves and others. So is it exactly a new year, or is it the same thing with the more checks off of your bucket list? So I would like to invite you to take a moment to look back of the hill of the century and turn around and to see among all of that walking or treading, all the curves and the bends and the rugged path, can you look back at them and smile and say, okay? Or are they something that is carrying as a burden inside of you that is still there? That suffering, that pain is still there. Do you marvel in its beauty or do you not? Yesterday, Brother Papalu said to dig down deep into the depth of the attic. It takes a lot of courage to do something like that. Maybe we can take a breath and see where we are at. We know that we're almost a quarter way through the century. And whether we make it to 2050 is the big question mark. A lot of anxiety around that also, whether we can be the same person in the year 2050, or will there be a 2050 for us to celebrate? Let us look deeply into our hill of the century. Sometimes we get so caught up. I remember as a novice, Tai used to tell me, he encouraged me to write in a journal. And I didn't, I was a teenager when I ordained, 14 years old, and just didn't really like school, so that's why I came into the monastery. Didn't like writing articles, writing paper, they skipped the whole college and university thing. But he did encourage me to write in my journal, a journal. And I didn't think that it was very important. Like, it's a journal. And and I think most of us live our lives in that way. It is not important. It's just every day, I'm going to write the same thing. I woke up this morning at 5 o'clock. And I fell asleep in sitting meditation just like yesterday. But I added a different kind of jam to my oatmeal. And then it's because it's the same thing over and over, and we just get, it's not important to write these things down. But because I was an obedient daughter, I just did it because I did it, not because I really wanted to, but only because Tai told me to. And sometimes you just have to rely on that, yeah. And so I just like being a good child, and I just wrote in my journal, and then, I didn't really know what to write, and then I just put down every single thought that I had in there, like, oh my God, this is so boring. Oh my goodness, it's so cold, and why is she like that? Like all of these thoughts, right? And then, but the one thing, there was a catch. Tai said, once you finish, he gifted me a little notebook. And he said, why don't you write in this? And when you finish this, you can give it to me and I'll give you another one. Another notebook. Getting a gift from Tai, wow. And getting a second gift from Tai, okay, yeah, I'll do it, So I started writing in my journal. And I was thinking, and then, like as you continue to practice, we have a lot of difficulties, trying to adjust to everything, adjusting to myself as a growing teenager in the monastery. Believe me, we did not have a teens program. I had to figure everything out myself, and everybody assumed that I knew, and none of my elder brothers and sisters are here, so I can say this. But, it was quite difficult because I was Vietnamese, American, but looking very Vietnamese. So I had double culture, which I didn't quite understand the Vietnamese culture, but I felt I was identified more with my American side. But the expectations of me, the pressure. And then I started to write all of those difficulties in my journal, and the difficulties I started to have with my brothers and sisters, mainly sisters, because I didn't live with the brothers. And then at one point, I had this realization, and I was like, oh no. Tai is going to read this. And so I took another journal, the one that I bought myself, I gifted myself, and I continued. So that journal, till this day, is left unfinished. Because then I can tell a lie, and it'll be the truth. If you'd asked me, Sister Nghiêm, did you finish the journal? No, Tai is not done yet. But after that, I have like 10 others that I've written, but that one is still incomplete. So that means I don't have to give it to him so that he can read all of my problems in there. But come again, fast forward to 2010. That is already, I'm a Dharma teacher, and the suffering and the difficulties of myself as a novice, as a young monastic, and finding my place evolved, without really having to do something about it, because I didn't think I needed to fix it. And sometimes when we have a difficulty, we think I have to fix this problem. Something needs to change. But I just continued with the everyday schedule and the program of the monastic community, and just being there with my practice without actively digging into trying to understand. Because remember, I was a teenager. Thinking deep doesn't follow in my priorities. But in 2010, I was assigned to go to Thailand to help with the organization of Thai's Southeast Asia tour. And usually we clean up our space so that other brothers and other sisters, should there be a visiting sister, there's a space for them to stay. So I had to clean up my space and consolidate, and so that my bed is empty, because I didn't know how long I was going to go. And I came across all of my journals. And after a period of time, I stopped writing them, because once you become an adult, you're too busy. So I was writing, and I was like reading. I was like, that's interesting. So then you take the time, and just sort of read. I was like, oh my goodness, I did that. And you start to like, I thought that, and then it's like, oh yeah, I remember this. And then I happened to meet Tai, and I said, Tai, guess what I found? I found all of my journals, and all of a sudden you see Tai's eyes light up. Really? And then he didn't ask me right away, because I was there to do work, and he said, at one point, can I read your journals? And I don't think he was trying to guilt trip me or anything like that. But he said, I want to update this new book because Thai has an old book that he written in Vietnam about young monastics and encouraging young monastics. And he said, I want to update that book for modern monastics, and just to see what kind of mindset do you guys have. Like millennial monastics are totally different than Thai's generation. Okay, I'm just saying. Um, and so he really wanted to know, what happens in the young monastics in this day and age. And I was like, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe for the greater cause. I don't know, So I come home and I'm like, okay, I'll think about it, Thai. I'll think about it, Thai. So then I reread my journals again. And I'm like, oh, no, this book can't go. Not this one. And so I just sort of skimmed through, and you have because I used to write also in code in case somebody accidentally found it. So then those letters and those numbers so I used to do that, and I was just reading all that. And no, this can't go, and then eventually none of them can go to Thai. And for one whole evening, that has been should I or should I not? Next morning sitting meditation is should I and should I not? The whole 45 minutes of now, what are the pros and cons about this? I'm gonna expose myself and and the most important thing is the feeling of shame. When you're not a good practitioner and you beat yourself down and Thai will judge me. That feeling. But in the end, I gave everything to him. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do this. Whatever it is, it's done. It's there. And he had no idea that I would actually give it to him. So I gave it to him, and I said, Thai, these are my journals, all 10 of them. And then he looked at me, and I said, but can I have them back? And he nodded. But usually Thai would hand it to his attendants to put in his bag. But he took it and he put it in his coat, and he carried it out to his hut in Upper Hamlet. I felt so much release from that. So much release from that. For as true and as difficult that suffering was, me being there at that moment in time, or even being here now, is a testament that ain't got nothing on me. Nothing at all. And sometimes holding on to those journals keep us imprisoned because we identify ourselves with that, our past suffering, our past pain. But Thai's gesture of holding and cradling, almost covering and protecting that, is also the gentleness that we can use for ourselves. I didn't get my journals back until 10 years later. I actually had to go to his library and just take out every single one. And I do not know if there is a second book of how young monastics are and encouraging words for young monastics. But the moment I freed myself, freed my journal, I felt so much freedom and so much joy that, yes, at that moment and at that time, my suffering, my difficulty, they were real, almost suffocating. But now looking back and said, don't bring up the same kind of feeling anymore. I can read those again and just sort of smile at it. Oh, what a beautiful scenery. What a beautiful story. And it's become who I am today. But sometimes when we suffer so much from the past, we start to have a lot of anxiety. We start to have a lot of anxiety and fear related to what if it happens again? What if I meet that same kind of suffering? So we do everything that we can to take preventative measures. You come here for preventative measures, to learn how to take care of those emotions when they arise again. And it's not a bad thing, but sometimes it could be a spiritual bypassing of not really looking deeply. Because then that breathing deeply, calming our emotions, taking each step in mindfulness can be the obstacle for us to really go down into the basement and pull out all the deep, darkest things. And that's not the purpose. That's not the purpose of our practice. The practice is there so that when we do look into our suffering, we are protected. Not for us to not look into our suffering. And of course, we have to train ourselves. This is not to say that everybody is like this, but there is such a thing, a spiritual bypassing, that I'm always happy. I'm just okay, you'll just breathe and just calm down. So when do you get to the point of transforming at the base? Can you look at that again and smile? Usually, I had a little accident. I'm still smiling. And the funny thing is that when I was in the paramedic, in the ambulance, they had asked me, how am I feeling? Am I feeling pain? And honestly speaking, physically, I couldn't feel anything. Emotionally, I was like, not really. I asked the paramedic, what am I supposed to feel? Physically, my finger hurt my finger, but am I supposed to feel fear? The thought, the idea of something is wrong, something is bad, and I get all this anxiety. Am I supposed to feel an emotion or a physical pain? And the paramedic, he said, you are the first person, I think, that is so calm in this situation. And I'm like, really? Okay. I was like, I would be, he said, these are his words, I would be freaking out if this happened to my finger. I said, well, freaking out is not going to fix the problem. And what I did say to him, he said, I've been a nun for 26 years. And he's like, oh, that might explain it. Yeah. And he was like, so you meditate and kind of stuff? I was like, yeah, you can call it that, And then he said, oh, yeah, my partner and I started to do meditation. And, I heard you can go to different realms and just different stages and things like that. I was like, well, honey, if you can't be happy here, you're not going to be happy in any realm. And it was very fun. It was just, it was like, and I ended up giving a short Dharma talk with my hand in the air like this, and I'm just like, yeah, like really calm. He's like, are you in pain? Do you need any Tylenol? I was like, I don't think so. He's like, but we have the best stuff in the ambulance. We have the best stuff. I'm like, well, if you think so, okay. But the whole time, it's not easy going into something like this. When I got into the hospital and they were caring for me, and then, they're a little bit busy in the ER. And so I was sitting there and I was saying, oh, one finger wiggles, it's enough to be happy. Just one finger. But the first thing, when I was able to get my phone, I texted my sisters, my biological sisters, and I said, don't tell mom. Like, I am a monastic. I've been ordained since I was 14. Yes, I'm still scared of my mom. I think we all are. And the only reason why I was not afraid of her. Of course, you would get an earful of, how can you? But it was more about worry. But another thing that I felt more deeper than the fear of being reprimanded and reminded of my lack of mindfulness was the fact that something that I have inherited, a family heirloom, that my mother treasured, that I've made it hurt. That she, luckily for me, that since the day I have been conceived and born, cared for me in every moment, nurtured me for 40 years. And when just instant, I hurt myself. Almost like I've hurt the inheritance that I've received from my ancestors and from my mother. That we are all here, not just as a continuation, theoretically, we understand, yes, we have mom and dad, and they're 50-50, and we're 50-50 of such and such, and we can go down a whole long line. But we are sacred because we are the inheritance, the family inheritance. Sometimes it's the jewelry, or it's the ring, or an engagement ring, but it's not. Your whole body itself is sacred. And for me to create a wound in it, I felt ashamed. Because something that my mother had cared for 40 years, and every single detail, that I made it get a crack. I broke the family heirloom. And that was what bothered me more than getting an earful. Because I was not careful enough with my own person, with my own body, that I have inherited from my ancestors. And that has been passed down from generation with so much care and tenderness and love. And that in one instant of forgetfulness, misjudgment, I would say, that I created this wound. Not only did my finger feel the pain, my body feel the pain. I'm sure when my mother saw it, she was like, what happened? She also felt the pain. And that also means my grandparents felt the pain of what is happening in my own body. Sometimes we like to think and we live ourselves just for ourselves, and we forget that we are the continuation. We are our ancestors. And our body in itself is the inheritance that we have received. It's not the money, it's not the jewelry, it's not anything, our own body. And have we taken care of it? And how do we want to transmit it? Yes, we have children now and grandchildren, etc. And how do we want to continue to transmit? The transmission is not just linear. Right now, you are living parallel with your own continuation, with your own children. And you are also living parallel with your ancestors. Your parents are your youngest ancestors. Going on. So taking care of ourselves, our suffering and our pain. And sometimes we do inherit the suffering of our ancestors too. I've been able to make peace with my ancestor. Every time I do a meditation practice, for a while I had to sit like this. and really feel the blood flow into each part of my finger. And I said, I am regenerating right now. So much insight that have been passed down to me physically from my own body, not just this 40 years since my birthday, but so much intelligence and evolution that my body has to be able to heal itself in just one instant. So taking care of ourselves is also taking care of our ancestors and our descendants all at the same time. One of the things that I see that I have this tendency to is that we all live as if nothing will change. Tomorrow's another day. Tonight we celebrate, but tomorrow's another day. We don't get up at 5, but we still have breakfast, and we still have a Dharma talk, and we carry on, and it goes on, and the person that we are sitting with is always going to be there for us, is always going to be there. So we sort of brush it off. We brush off the important things because they will always be there. And then when they are not there, we're like, oh, when did that happen? And then we start to fill ourselves with regrets. We don't get to say the words that we want to say. We don't get to heal what we want to heal. So instead of this new year becoming a new year of resolution, just a year of broken promises or empty promises to yourself, but it can be a year of action. Do it. Do it, because it's already 24 steps, 24 years into the century. And the things that we have not been able to do since we were a teenager, since I was a teenager, or since you are younger adults, you can do them now. To not just say on a sheet of paper and then we burn it and then we forget about it. Make sure, if you don't know, I know some of us are on an electronic sabbatical. Somehow get a copy of your New Year's resolution, because once you throw that in the fire, it's gone. Right? And we forget and we carry on. But it should be a year of action, to put our resolution, what we really want, into action, and not just written on a sheet of paper. So we can act upon our resolution. And sometimes we think that healing is something that we need to work on. When I wrote those journals, I had those real sufferings, but I never really worked on those. And as I continue to nourish myself with my everyday practice, it healed itself. I'm not doing anything with my finger, but my finger healed itself. Yeah, I supported it, with my stent, supported it with taking more vitamins and minerals and all this stuff, just so that I can be of support, but not actively doing things, because it's very tiring. But one of the things that I can be very sure of, that impermanence is not something that we can be tired of or scared of. When we have this suffering, and this has been my practice as of late, is, yes, I've had that suffering, I've had that difficulty when I was such and such years old. I've had that experience, I've transformed it. And if I were to meet that same suffering again, I would smile to it and say, I got you. Because it's not our responsibility to push everything away. We don't need to push our suffering away for only happiness to exist. In an ideal world, yes. But then if everything was so happy, we'd get so bored, nothing left to do. And so instead of being imprisoned by this fear of suffering will come, he can say, hello, suffering. I see you. I see you. And I got you. I hold you in my arms. And we can breathe together again. So we don't have to eliminate and clean and get rid of. Because they're pretty much a part of you. Just like the darkness and the light. The story that Thai always tells us is that God has said, light, let there be light. And in this conversation, light then says to God, but I have to wait for darkness. And God said, but darkness is already here. And then the light says, well, then I am already here. There are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have light without dark, and you cannot have darkness without light. The same thing with our own suffering. So our goal is not to eliminate, not to transform every single one so that we can be just happy all the time. It's our goal, if there is any, is to be at peace with whatever comes towards us. To be able to smile and to embrace without that second arrow of fear and anxiety. To acknowledge and accept us as we are, who we are, without having to try to change us because we are ashamed. I naively thought that I would feel bad and judged by Thai because of my difficulties, but that never happened. That never happened. Just continued on to embrace and to hold. Sometimes we say, I just want to quickly wrap up. With all the things that are happening in the world right now, all the suffering and despair and the pain. I remember when we first heard news of the war in Ukraine. My mother sat there on the image and she just cried and she said, this is very much like the Vietnam War. And everything that is happening now in Gaza, Palestine, is the same thing. Some people believe that history is repeating itself over again. We might have a World War III, all of these things that are happening, but in fact, this is not happening again. I feel you can only make history if there is a change. Not repeat the same thing. So even for ourselves, if there is a change, you've made history. But if we continue on with our wrong perceptions and act upon our fear and our anxiety, then that is not history. That is habits. Habits of wrong perception. Habits of creating suffering. Only change can make history. And now, even for ourselves, transforming and healing that can also help transform and heal on a bigger scale. On a bigger scale, because it might be our neighbor. And this is not to eliminate everyone who agrees with us, who doesn't agree with us. but to open our hearts, to embrace. And it's not easy. It's not easy to open our heart and to hold those who have hurt us and who have caused us suffering and pain. But to make history, there needs transformation. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. Because if you're suffering and you send yourself thoughts and prayers, you really don't get anywhere. So let us make this year a year of making history for the books. Transformation at the base. Finding the courage to look deeply inside of us and say, well, hello, beautiful. Do you do that in the morning? First thing in the morning, you wake up and you look at yourself in the mirror. Hello, beautiful, and I love you. You don't tell yourself that? Maybe I'm the only one. I never wake up with a bad hair day, just letting you know that. That is the change. To wake up in the morning and say, hello, beautiful. I see you for yourself. And I accept you where you are. You are, at this moment, a legendary person. One time, if you know the history of our teacher, he has shared about his time in Singapore. And at that time, he was helping the boat people. And then he had to leave from the country. In 2010, Thai had returned. 2011, I believe. He had returned 2010. He returned to Singapore for the first time in 40 years. And I was his attendant. I came to see him. And he had said, Sister Kính, I want to go to the beach. And I'm like, go to the beach? We're at a retreat. And he wants to go to the beach. And I said, Thai, do you want this to be a whole Sangha event? Or just you? And he said, just a small car. So I had arranged with Thai's driver and the time to take Thai out to the beach, whichever one. There wasn't any one in particular. And we were in the car with myself and Thai and his driver and all the attendants. There's about 9 of us in the car. And it was a little bit exciting for the attendants, the other attendants. They get to go to the beach in Singapore and things like that. I mean, we're not going to be swimming. Not in that sense, not going down there and hit the sun, But what we did there was very quiet. We just sat on the beach and Thai was sitting in the front, and it started to rain. Very beautiful day. And it was like a cloud rain. It was just by a passing cloud, and it just sort of sprinkled a little bit, but very heavy drops. And so I had held the umbrella behind Thai, and he was sitting there in sitting meditation. And all the brothers and sisters were just like excited. Oh, this is, the beach in Singapore. And I had to turn around and to remind them to be quiet. Nothing was said. Nothing was said at all. And then Thai just gestured to me to make a cup of tea for him. So I had a cup of tea for him and I passed it to Thai. And then he looked at the cup of tea and he enjoyed the cup of tea and sort of passed the cup back. That's a sort of silent, there's communication, there's no verbal talking. And it was a cue for refill. And we gave him another cup of tea. And he had 2 cups of tea. And he gave us the cup again and then refilled it. And then he looked at the cup without saying anything. And all of a sudden, at that moment, he just poured the cup of tea in front of him. And I'm like, oh no, is there sand in the cup? And then he gave me the cup again. And I was like, okay, what did I do wrong? Like, why didn't he drink the cup of tea? When I asked him, Thai, would you like another cup of tea? And he just said no. But I had realized at that time that Thai was inviting all of those people who have died at sea, the boat people of Vietnam. He was offering them a cup of tea. He was inviting them to have a cup of tea. After almost 40 years, 30 years of not being able to return. And after that, we did walking meditation. But it wasn't a simple walking meditation on the sand. We actually went into the water to do walking meditation. And for me, I felt at that time like, oh, Thai is inviting all of those who have lost at sea to do walking meditation with him. So each step along the shores, he was knee-deep in water, walking. And I was on the deeper end, like the ocean side, just in case, I was thigh deep in water. But it was really profound for me to be touched that kind of transformation and healing. And we don't have to forget. I don't think Thai ever forgot. But for me, that was a very profound moment, is that even in this moment today, right here and right now, just by drinking a cup of tea, can bring a lot of healing for your own self and for the other person. And walking for them. Thai is with us. Thai enjoyed every step climbing the hill of the century, listening to the sound of the bell. And he was able to walk together with us for 21 years on this hill of the century. And each turn, each difficulty he met, he had the embrace of the Sangha with him. And he was there. And I know he has continued to be here together with us tonight. In each of our breath, in each of our steps, we can generate that same kind of love. We can generate the same kind of understanding, the same kind of transformation and healing to offer to all those who are suffering. Tonight, this morning I heard news that tonight or today, according to the lunar calendar, is the exact day in which Thai has passed away. On the solar calendar, it is January 22nd, but according to the lunar calendar of that day, it is today. So in Vietnam and in Thailand, all of our practice center has spent ringing in the new year by generating the energy of love and inviting Thai to be with us in each step and each breath. And we would like to invite you all to do the same. Nothing is lost. We are all here and Thai is here. All of this coming together in this family, a spiritual family, came from one person's transformation and healing. And so if we as a Sangha just imagine what we could do, if one person did this, we can do so much more. And that energy of love and peace that we generate is a lot different, because we start off with the grassroots of transforming and healing in ourselves. So, thank you for being here. And just a little TMI, I actually, right after got my finger fixed, I went to the object of my demise and I said, "It's not your fault." And I embraced it and I held it and said, "It's okay. Maybe you can do that too." I mean, I don't want to give you any more details. Just to say, I still have a good relationship with that object. So thank you so much for being here. And maybe continue to generate the energy of peace and love for ourselves, for our ancestors, and for our future generations.